Hello, I'm Conrad Bain. Tonight on Diff'rent Strokes, we're starting a special two-part show on a very sensitive and important subject. Now, we urge families, children, and parents alike to watch both of these informative episodes and then to discuss the problem presented, which is of deep concern to all of us.
Remember when sitcoms were supposed to be comfort food? Laugh tracks, goofy neighbors, everything wrapped up neatly in 22 minutes? Well, every so often, those same shows would slam on the brakes and hit us with what we call a very special episode. Suddenly, your favorite primetime escape was teaching you life and death lessons, and you didn't know whether to laugh, cry, or call your parents into the room. Today, we're counting down 6 of the most unforgettable episodes of the 80s that went full very special. Oh, and stick around for number 1. It's the one that left audiences disturbed, confused, and asking, wait, did that really air on television? Now, before we dive in, hit that subscribe button. It helps us keep these nostalgia trips rolling every single week. Alright, now let's get into the countdown with number 6, Small Wonder, Woodward and Bernstein, syndication.
She's a small wonder, lovely and bright and soft curves.
Small Wonder was one of the weirdest shows on television, and that was saying something for the 80s. It ran from 1985 to 1989, giving us 4 seasons and 96 episodes of pure after-school silliness. We actually did a whole deep dive on this show in a previous video, so check the description if you missed it. Ted Lawson, played by Dick Christie, was a suburban engineer who secretly built a childlike android named VICI, which stood for Voice Input Child Identicant. Vicky, played by Tiffany Brissette, looked like a 10-year-old girl but spoke in a monotone and had superhuman strength.
My name is Vicky. Pleased to meet you.
She was essentially Ted's beta test for a domestic robot, but to keep it secret, the family passed her off as their adopted daughter. So she was cleaning the house and pretending to be a normal kid all at the same time. It was absolutely ridiculous, and we loved every minute of it. Then, on September 12th of 1987, Season 3 opened with Woodward and Bernstein, an episode where this bizarre sitcom premise collided head-on with one of the scariest social issues of the 1980s, child abduction. The setup started light. Jamie Lawson and his buddy Reggie got in trouble for writing fake news stories for the school paper. When Vicky pitched in to help, she spotted her new friend Chrissy's photo printed as a missing child notice.
But you're missing... Oh no! That is me! Why am I in a milk carton?
While the humans froze in panic, Vicky processed the information with her usual deadpan efficiency. A robot with pigtails flatly declaring your friend has been abducted was easily one of the strangest very special episode moments in TV history. The Lawsons soon discovered that Chrissy's father had taken her from her mother, a case of parental kidnapping that was tragically common at the time. In a surprising turn, the script treated him not as a cartoon villain but as a desperate man making terrible choices. Still, the real emotional weight belonged to the humans. Vicky was simply a walking fact-checker and a pinafore, calmly connecting the dots while everyone else struggled with the human fallout. And then, in true sitcom fashion, the serious message dissolved into silliness. Jamie and Reggie ended up winning an award for their reporting, only to get cake smashed in their faces as the credits rolled. Freeze frame, laughs restored, trauma neatly boxed away. It was peak 1980s TV insanity, a real-world PSA about child abduction delivered by a monotone android, followed immediately by a food fight. Awkward, hilarious, and unforgettable. Woodward and Bernstein proved that even the most absurd sitcoms couldn't resist the very special episode treatment. Number 5, Punky Brewster, Cherie Lifesaver, NBC and syndication.
The world is blind, or just a little unkind.
Punky Brewster ran from 1984 to 1988, delivering 88 episodes of pure 80s charm. Soleil Moon Frye played Punky, the spunky orphan with mismatched shoes and a heart of gold, taken in by grumpy but lovable Henry Warnemont, played by George Gaynes. Most weeks it was puppies, playgrounds, and life lessons wrapped in a rainbow headband. Then came Season 2, Episode 16, Cherie Lifesaver, which aired on January 19, 1986. What started as a simple game of hide-and-seek with Punky and her friends, Cherie, played by Cherie Johnson, Margot, played by Amy Foster, and Alan, played by Casey Ellison, playing hide-and-seek. Cherie crawled into an old refrigerator to hide, the door locked, and she couldn't get out.
50, 55, 60, 65, 70, 75,
In the 80s, it felt like every vacant lot had a randomly discarded appliance just sitting around. Suddenly, this sugary sitcom went straight horror movie. By the time the kids found her, Cherie was unconscious and not breathing. Cue one of the most intense moments ever aired in a children's sitcom. Punky and Margot started CPR, fresh off a lesson they just learned in school. Alan froze up since he had been clowning around when their teacher Mike taught the technique.
1, 2, 3, 4. Terrific. Now check for pulse and breathing.
The show played it brutally straight. CPR mattered, and not paying attention had real consequences. A lot of viewers grew up actually thinking this episode changed refrigerator safety laws, but not quite. The United States had already passed the Refrigerator Safety Act back in 1956, requiring newer models to have doors that opened from the inside. But Henry's old fridge was from before those rules, and the writers slipped that in with a joke earlier in the episode.
Oh, what happened, Henry? Were you trying to make French toast again?
My refrigerator just blew up.
Well, I'm not surprised. After all, it's almost as old as you.
The real point was that older appliances were still deadly traps sitting in garages and alleys decades later, and the impact was huge. Soleil Moon Frye has said fans often told her they learned CPR from this very episode and later used it to save real lives. That is some heavy stuff for a show better known for teaching us that dogs and orphans cure everything. For Gen X kids, Cherie Lifesaver wasn't just a very special episode, it was a full-blown PSA disguised as after-school TV. It scared us straight about refrigerators and maybe even nudged a few of us into paying attention in health class. Number 4, Silver Spoons. Spare the Rod. NBC.
Here we are, face to face, a couple of silver spoons.
Remember Silver Spoons? It ran from 1982 to 1987, churning out 116 episodes of pure wish fulfillment TV. Ricky Schroder showed up as Ricky Stratton on the doorstep of Edward Stratton III, played by Joel Higgins, this wealthy guy who basically never grew up and had no clue he even had a kid. Suddenly, this man-child surrounded by toys had to figure out how to be an actual father. But then came Season 2, Episode 17, Spare the Rod, which aired on March 24th, 1984, and the show decided to get real in the heaviest way possible. Ricky befriended this kid Toby, played by Mino Palouse, who showed up first with a broken arm, then later with bruises. When you couldn't ignore the pattern anymore, the truth came out. Toby's dad was abusing him. Talk about whiplash. The same Edward Stratton who rode a tiny train through his mansion and danced to the Pac-Man theme in his arcade faced down Toby's father Larry, who basically dared Edward to call the cops, insisting no court was going to take a kid away from his parent. Edward's comeback? This gut-wrenching story about serving on a hospital board and watching a judge give an abusive father a second chance, only to see that same guy back in court weeks later on charges after he killed his kid. This wasn't your typical sitcom teachable moment. This was brutal. Here's what made it even more complicated. Larry admitted he was abused as a kid too.
Your father hit you? He loved me, and I loved him. And I hated him.
He was trapped in this cycle, scared his son would hate him the same way he hated his own father, but he couldn't stop hitting him. The show managed to say what you're doing is wrong while still making you feel something for this guy who was completely broken. For 1984, that was pretty bold stuff. Sure, there were still traces of the show's usual vibe. Toby cracked a joke about saving a cat named Brian Setzer because, hey, it was the 80s and the stray cats were everywhere.
You hurt yourself in the game?
Oh, no, I was warming the bench. This happened last week. It's a long story.
Toby was trying to save Brian Setzer.
Yeah, see, Brian is a stray cat that roams around in our neighborhood.
Why do you call him Brian Setzer?
Because Brian Setzer's in the Stray Cats.
The Who?
No, The Who's a different group.
But the ending didn't go for cheap laughs. Toby went to live with his aunt while his dad got help, and in this moment, that should have felt manipulative, but somehow it didn't. Toby hugged his father and told him he loved him.
But she'll take care of you while I work on my problem. I want to be a better father.
I love you, Dad.
I love you too.
Hope without pretending everything was suddenly okay. The real kicker came when Edward realized that being a dad wasn't something you figured out once. It was this ongoing thing you had to keep working at. For those of us who grew up watching, it was unforgettable. Here was Silver Spoons, this show built on rich kid fantasies and a father who collected toys, putting everything aside to tackle one of childhood's darkest realities while still believing in the possibility of healing. Are you enjoying this walk down memory lane? If so, hit that like button and subscribe. It helps us keep the nostalgia flowing. And we'd love to know which very special episode stuck with you the most. Now, back to the countdown with number 3, Family Ties. A, My Name is Alex, NBC. Family Ties ran from 1982 to 1989, giving us 180 episodes of pure 80s gold. The show's hook was brilliant. Stephen and Elise Keaton, played by Michael Gross and Meredith Baxter, were ex-hippies trying to raise their kids in Reagan's America. Their oldest son, Alex, played by Michael J. Fox, was this full-blown young Republican who loved supply-side economics. Week after week, the laughs came from Alex clashing with his idealistic parents, and we ate it up. But then came Season 5's A, My Name is Alex, which aired as a 1-hour, 2-part special on March 12, 1987. What started like any other episode turned into probably the wildest thing any sitcom had ever tried.
I'm glad you're here, but this is a little strange. My parents heard me talking to you earlier, and they think I'm seeing ghosts. So I wonder if I brought them down here, would you say hi?
Sure, hi, and maybe boo.
The story centered on Alex's friend Greg McCormick, played by Brian McNamara, who died in a car accident while running an errand Alex had refused to help with because he was too busy studying. The guilt consumed him. He should have been in that car, and that simple fact shattered his carefully maintained confidence. The first half played out like business as usual. The Keatons mourned Greg's loss, the jokes were lighter but still there, and that familiar living room set stayed put. Then the second half began, and Family Ties became something completely unrecognizable. The cozy Keaton home vanished, replaced by darkness and almost bare sets. Alex found himself sitting with an unseen therapist, and suddenly, you weren't watching Thursday night television anymore. This felt like live theater. Flashbacks to Alex's childhood and family life materialized around him as he tried to make sense of his grief. At one point, he cried out,
Why am I alive? Why am I alive? Why am I alive?
It was a gut punch of a line you didn't expect to hear on a sitcom sandwiched between Pepsi and Kodak commercials. We'd gone from watching a sitcom to witnessing a one-man play about mortality. The ending wasn't wrapped up in a neat little bow either, but it offered hope. Alex realized he could honor Greg's memory not by drowning in guilt, but by living his own life more fully and letting go of the need to control every outcome. It was about growth, not closure. People lost their minds. The episode swept the Emmys, winning for writing and technical direction, while Michael J. Fox earned his second consecutive Emmy for lead actor in a comedy series, thanks largely to this powerhouse performance. But the real victory was proving network television could take massive risks and actually pull them off. For those of us who caught it that Thursday night, A, My Name is Alex was the kind of episode that stayed with you long after the credits rolled. Years later, you'd still think about it whenever someone mentioned Family Ties. Not the Republican jokes or the 80s fashion even, but that night when Alex P. Keaton completely fell apart and took us all with him. Number 2, Too Close for Comfort. For every man, there's two women. ABC and syndication. Too Close for Comfort ran from 1980 to 1987 with Ted Knight as Henry Rush, a cranky cartoonist navigating life with his two grown daughters, and Monroe Ficus, the lovable, goofy tenant played by Jim J. Bullock. Most weeks, it was lighthearted fun. Ted Knight's exasperation, goofy hijinks, and Monroe being, well, Monroe. But then came the 1985 episode For Every Man, There's Two Women, a so-called very special episode that made viewers wonder if they'd stumbled into an urban legend. Spoiler, it was very real. The story followed Monroe, who was kidnapped and assaulted by two women.
Does anyone know what's going on here?
I think I do. Those two women were attracted to Moreau. They desired him and helped themselves.
The writers thought they were tackling a serious subject. Instead, thanks to the ever-present laugh track and jarring tone, it came across like the worst kind of comedy of errors. We didn't know whether to laugh, cry, or just yank the plug on our TV sets. Now behind the scenes, the episode was controversial even before it aired. Ted Knight reportedly hated the script and there were rewrites. The network delayed airing it because it was originally planned for season 4 but didn't see the light of day until season 5. And when it finally aired, the ending didn't help. Henry Rush tried to confront Monroe's abductors himself after police brushed him off. The perpetrators were eventually taken into custody, but along the way, the script sprinkled in offbeat gags that completely undercut the weight of what had just happened. The fallout was immediate. Critics and fans agreed the tone was a disaster. Unlike some other very special episodes which at least tried to balance message with impact, Too Close for Comfort crashed hard. It didn't educate, it didn't raise awareness, it just unsettled everybody. Part of the discomfort came from Monroe himself. Viewers in the 80s often speculated about Monroe's sexuality, something the show itself never touched. So when the writers handed him this storyline, it came off with a layer of irony they probably didn't intend. Jim J. Bullock threw himself into it, but the material was working against him. And if you're wondering why you never saw this episode in reruns, well, you're not alone. Like other controversial very specials of the era, it was pulled from syndication. That scarcity helped cement its status as a whispered piece of TV lore, proof that sometimes sitcoms should never try to get serious. For Gen X, this wasn't just a misfire, it was a deeply disturbing moment dressed up in the wrong format. A show that usually delivered goofy Monroe pratfalls instead gave us one of the most notorious very special episodes of the 1980s. It was TV history, but for all the wrong reasons. Number 1, Diff'rent Strokes, The Bicycle Man, NBC and ABC.
Different strokes it takes, different strokes it takes, different strokes to move the world.
Now, you remember Diff'rent Strokes, right? It ran on NBC from 1978 to 1986, following two Harlem kids, Arnold and Willis Jackson, played by Gary Coleman and Todd Bridges, who got adopted by this wealthy businessman Philip Drummond, played by Conrad Bain. Pretty revolutionary setup back then, and it usually delivered its lessons with Arnold's famous catchphrase.
What you talking about, Willis?
But in 1983, the show dropped the most messed up very special episode ever. Season 5's episodes 16 and 17, The Bicycle Man. You knew something was different from the opening seconds. Before a single joke landed, Conrad Bain himself stepped completely out of character, looked straight into the camera, and basically said, "Buckle up, because this is going to be disturbing." That had never happened before. It started innocent enough, but quickly became every warning sign parents tell you about. Arnold had befriended Mr. Horton, this friendly neighborhood bike shop owner, played by Gordon Jump. First came the free bike repairs, then arcade games in the back room. And before you knew it, there was pizza and wine, dirty magazines, and shirtless photography sessions in Mr. Horton's apartment. Now, here's the part that still gives people chills. The laugh track kept rolling throughout. Jokes about cartoons and pizza got canned laughter, even as every kid watching sat frozen on their couch, realizing that something very wrong was happening.
You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours.
You keep coming up with these presents, you can scratch me all over.
That jarring clash between the laughs and the horror made it unforgettable and deeply unsettling. The producers had worked with child psychologists to get the grooming tactics right, and man, did it show. The message was crystal clear. Predators don't look like monsters, and they know exactly how to manipulate trust. By the end, Arnold and his friend Dudley escaped, and Horton got arrested. For those of us watching, the impact was immediate and lasting. Suddenly, bike shops looked sinister, pizza parties seemed suspicious, and every adult offering free stuff got the side eye. It turned that vague stranger danger concept into something terrifyingly real. What makes this episode even harder to watch now is knowing that both Todd Bridges and Shavar Ross, who played Dudley, had experienced inappropriate behavior in real life around that time. That real-world pain gives the whole thing this haunting weight decades later. And if Gordon Jump looked familiar, that just made it worse. This was the lovable, bumbling station manager from WKRP in Cincinnati and the lonely Maytag repairman. Watching him play a predator turned America's favorite TV uncle into one of the most terrifying characters of the 1980s. The Bicycle Man became the blueprint for every very special episode that came after. It proved sitcoms could tackle the unthinkable, but it also scarred a generation. For kids who watched it, there was no going back. Even your favorite comfort shows could suddenly venture into genuinely disturbing territory. And there you have it. 6 very special episodes that took our comfy sitcoms and turned them into lessons we never forgot. Which very special episodes should we tackle in part 2? Drop your picks in the comment section below. Also, be sure to subscribe for more deep dives into the TV shows we grew up with. And until next time, this is Remember When.